In the beginning, there were seven. Seven buildings, that is, that completed what was once known as the World Trade Center. While there were seven buildings, two of them noticeably stood out, and they were known as the Twin Towers. They could be seen for miles across New York City's skyline. They're so beautiful. I had the opportunity to visit the World Trade Center in 1993 and look at the Twin Towers firsthand. I was young, but from what I can remember, those were two big buildings. On September 11th, or what we now refer to as 9/11, the buildings were completely destroyed. In 2006, I had the opportunity to go to Ground Zero. It was a very amazing feeling to stand where something so iconic had once stood. The Twin Towers will always be an honorable landmark in New York City, as they were before 9/11, and their legacy after 9/11 will never be forgotten. I would like to enlighten you on a little bit of history behind those big towers. First, their debut to the big city in 1971, then the time of their demise, and also how we now remember them. The Twin Towers debuted as the tallest towers in the world in 1971. Behind the masterpiece was designer Minoru Yamasaki, who, quoted by the WorldTradeCenter.com, studied architecture at the University of Washington and New York University. And according to a timeline of the tallest towers in the world on Skyscraper.com, the Twin Towers were ranked the tallest of 12 towers in the early 70s. From 1971 to 1973, they would hold that title until it was passed to the Sears Tower in 1974. It was about 450 feet tall. The Twin Towers still remain the tallest buildings in New York City, even surpassing the Empire State Building. It was reported in an article from Inside on the News on October 14, 2001, by Cheryl Wedstein that one tower stood 1,368 feet tall, while the other tower stood 1,362 feet tall. Both of them had 110 floors. Okay. And I'd like to show you here. This is me, right here at the bottom of this picture, and those are the Twin Towers. It would take 248 of me to reach the height of those buildings. That's a pretty tall building looking from the ground up. Now, they just weren't for show. The buildings, they held office space for the government, as well as other well-known companies like the Bank of America, Verizon Communications, New York Stock Exchange, and the Dow Jones, and even a hotel was part of the complex. The Twin Towers was such a distinct attraction in New York City, but if you didn't get a chance to see them before 9/11, you never will. The Twin Towers on 9/11 were completely destroyed in a devastating terrorist attack in 2001. But what took almost a decade to design and years to build only took minutes to destroy. According to an article posted on CNN.com titled September 11th, Chronology of Terror, at about 8:46 a.m., a hijacked terrorist plane crashed into the North Building. About 15 minutes later, another hijacked airplane crashed into the other one. And before it was actually made official of what actually had occurred, President Bush made a statement, and I quote, "The country has suffered an apparent terrorist attack." Well, President Bush, apparently. But the North Tower had actually survived a fire on its 11th floor in about 1975, and then there was a terrorist bombing in 1993, in which both buildings survived as well. So why did the buildings collapse? It wasn't easy getting water 1,300 feet into the air. After burning for so long, they reached temperatures of up to 800 degrees. It was so hot, it caused the steel structure to melt and give away. Tragically, the Twin Towers, as we once knew them, were no more. The Twin Towers may no longer stand tall, but their legacy will never fall. The location in which the towers once stood is now a memorial site known as Ground Zero. There isn't much left of the Twin Towers or any other part of the World Trade Center, except a lot of memories and debris. Information gathered from WorldTradeCenter.com states that it took until May 30th, 2002 to remove over 1 million tons of concrete and steel from that location. It now looks like a construction site where something one day will be. It's hard to believe that something was actually once there. At Ground Zero, memorials are held each year for the nearly 3,000 people, according to the WorldTradeCenter.com, who lost their lives on that tragic day. And the names of each person are recited one by one in their remembrance, followed by a moment of silence. Even though the Twin Towers are no longer standing, they are remembered in spirit. As you can see, two beautiful light beams shine bright into the sky, and they can also be seen across New York City skyline. Today, new construction is currently in the works to rebuild the World Trade Center, but there's no intention of building any more Twin Towers. But they do report that there will be 7 buildings built, some of which are currently under construction. Of the 7 buildings, the main attraction is said to be the Freedom Tower, which is reported to reach the height of 1,776 feet. That building has not yet been completed. Now, some may wonder, now that Ground Zero is turning back into the World Trade Center, will there still be a memorial site? There is a National Museum dedicated to all the victims who lost their life and also to the Twin Towers. And according to the WorldTradeCenter.com, the Twin Towers will be memorialized forever there. Now, in conclusion, the Twin Towers would have been 38 years old today, and the 30 years that they were around, that's something to be remembered. From their record-setting debut in 1971 to their devastating fall in 2001, and how we remember them today. The Twin Towers will always be an honorable landmark in New York City as they were before 9/11, and their legacy after 9/11 will always be remembered. The saga of the Twin Towers was not brought to an end, but to a new beginning. While there is much history behind the Twin Towers, they have definitely become a part of history. And I hope their history will live on for generations through me, and now through you. Thank you.